What is good, everybody? It is your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Y'all sick of seeing my face yet? I know I've been on here a lot today, right? Hey, yo, we got to get into another week of fantasy football talk. And we got one half of the Fantasy Whispers pod on here, man. Shout out to the boy, Johnny Game Time Hicks for
What's
pulling
going
up
on?
on us. Johnny, how you feeling, my boy?
Oh, man, I'm feeling great. We got another week in the books. We got some bad injuries. But this week coming up, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, Pat. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is the bipocalypse is upon us.
Yeah.
Buckle up, get your seatbelts ready because it's gonna be brutal. This next week, there are 6 teams on a bye, which is like 20% of the NFL. A lot of fantasy stars are going to be out this week. So yeah, it's gonna be a wild one.
Now, let me ask you this. Let's jump straight into it. First off, like the video, subscribe to the page. We do talk fantasy football weekly. Got to change it up a little bit when we get in here because we're doing this show just about once a week to get you set for your waiver wires, get you set for everything that's coming up in the week. And like he said, it's bye hell this week. I mean, let's be real. It's like you said, 6 teams on the bye. But I'll say this, for teams in a position like mine, is this a week, in your opinion, where you have to look at this as, hey, listen, I've had a horrible start to the season. I'm sitting here low in the standings. This is an opportunity where I have the chance to start to get back moving in the right directions. Does that begin this week here?
It absolutely does. It starts right now. I don't care what your record is, 0-6, 1-5, even if you're 6-0, if you're lucky enough to be 6-0. We are just beginning the season. There is a lot to still unravel, still unpack. Pat, like we're just now starting to get into bye weeks. And this is what really separates, the players that are, they're throwing in their guys, they're playing their starters, and it's been nice. But when you start to have to throw in other players, starting to have to search that waiver wire and actually get some production out of there, this is where you can really make up some ground because maybe those teams that are up, 6-0 or 5-1, they might not have that great of depth. They might have some good starters, but now they're getting those buys. And once they throw in, a couple waiver wire, they don't know what they're doing. And then you can skate away with some wins that maybe it wasn't looking so much so in the beginning of the season.
Let's get into this, man. I mean, for us Christian McCaffrey owners, it's been a horrible season. I pretty much started every show we've done this way. I mean, he's now down on IR. What is the viable running back option going into this week if you were going in with him as your number one? What do you see on the waiver wire? What are you seeing that's coming up that's available in some of these leagues, still out there for you to go after? Or is it time to start, hey, look, if you need running back help, you're going to have to leverage another position?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways you can go about this, right? So if you're going on the waiver wire, you have Dearness Johnson, which is going to be you got Nick Chubb banged up. They're expecting him not to play. They're saying he still has an outside chance on Thursday night to play for Cleveland. However, it's not looking so great, right? So Dearness Johnson is the next man up there that will get that early down workload. Now there also is Dimitri Felton, he's one of those glitches that we really like in fantasy football where you can play him at the running back and wide receiver spot because he got that dual eligibility. And what we like about that is when you put him in the wide receiver spot, he's getting those running back touches. So he's probably going to see about 10 to 13. And that bodes well when you're talking about from a wide receiver standpoint, because there's very few wide receivers that are going to get you 10 plus carries or touches in a game. So I do think that that's an outside shot that you can also look at. And then, I hate to say this, it sounds gross. I know, I told myself never again, Pat. I told myself this 3 weeks ago, and here I am 3 weeks later, and we made up, and that's Penny. You got Rashad Penny over there because you've got Chris Carson on the IR. You've got Alex Collins, who he said was a waiver wire pickup last week. He ended up playing well for you last week, but he also came out of that game banged up, Pat. So it's looking like you can never fully stick a fork in him because Penny keeps showing himself, and Pete Carroll is saying he's ready to rock and roll. So he could be someone that is a plug and play to get you by this week as well.
And now with McCaffrey, is he to the point where he's a drop player, or do you keep him just in case? I mean, earliest you'll see him now, I believe week 9 at this point. It's you've missed him for a lot of the season. Do you keep him stashed on your team, giving him that slot for the off chance he might come back, or is this a we got to move past it because even if he comes back, hamstring probably not going to be right.
Yeah, so that's a great point. When you are talking about a hamstring injury, it tends to linger. That's clearly what happened, right? Because last week we were just talking. You say it, we bring it up all the time on the show, but it's true because last week we were talking about how CMC was saying, "Hey, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go this weekend," and they were like, "No, not so fast." And then he got placed on IR after that comment, which tells me that he was practicing. He was pushing it because he wanted to come back, and then he re-aggravated it, which sets him back a whole thing, like all over again, which is the fear for hamstring. So here's what I would suggest: if I wouldn't drop him because like even on the waiver, like even if there was a slight chance that he is going to come back at some point, even if it was like a more serious injury, right? And you threw him out on the waiver, someone's going to pick him up just because it's CMC and there's that dart throw. So I would try to package him up, maybe try to trade him if you're needing wins. You need to win now, right? You're behind 500. You need to make up some wins. I would maybe try to package CMC, go to a team that's winning, that's 5-1, and say, hey, CMC is going to be back at the end of this half, or in a couple weeks. You don't necessarily need wins right now. Let's make a deal, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I would generally try to do. What's nice about that is that we talked about hamstrings generally reoccur, and it's
Yeah.
not something that just goes away. So I do expect it to hamper CMC for the rest of the season. But again, if they do hold him out, they learn their lesson, then maybe it does actually heal 100%, and then you'll have CMC back. So it just depends on what your record is, how much your league trades as well, and how active you are on the waiver wire and trying to skate through the next 3 weeks.
Speaking of hamstring injuries, I mean, a guy that we all had high hopes for coming into this season, a guy who's been not so much, he's a conundrum, especially when he was down in Atlanta. I'm talking about Julio Jones, of course.
Oh,
He goes down again last night, another hamstring injury, another big injury to a guy that a lot of people thought was finally going to get in the end zone, finally going to get those touchdown shots that he just wasn't getting down there with Matty Ice. What should Julio Jones owners expect from him? Again, a hamstring, like we said,
yep.
something that can linger. What should we expect from him moving forward as we see his season kind of being up and down that same way?
He's another, unfortunately, because he is older, he doesn't garner that same kind of trade value. I would try to trade him, make him try to do a package deal.
Yeah.
I was concerned about Julio coming into this season because he was already coming in with injuries, and we joke about it and talk about, like, don't go searching for injuries because the injuries will find you. And we're seeing it right with Julio pop up again. It's very concerning. If you need to just straight up drop him because you're not getting, you send out a couple trade offers, no one's biting, and you need to, pick up a guy because there's a million people on waivers or a million people on buy, this week, and you just need to pick up a waiver wire wide receiver to get you through. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and it's unfortunate, but he tends to be a little bit more of a name than actual production as of right now. But it's sad to see, but yeah, it's unfortunate.
And I mean, it is sad to see because even when he was in Atlanta, like people would get Julio Jones based on the name, and it's just like you
Yep.
couldn't get him in the end zone. You thought that this would be the year where he's finally going to be able to get into the end zone, and it just really threw him.
And to be honest with you, Pat, I almost we've only got to see 2 games with Julio so far this season, so it could remain true. You could be absolutely 100% that he's just kind of allergic to the end zone.
Yeah.
However, watch this, and you'll start to notice Matt Ryan often does this. If you look back at his career, whenever he's had a dominant wide out number one, they don't lead in touchdowns. They're really good. Roddy White, they're great in yardage, but not mega touchdown scorers. He usually will go to his number 2, which is why you saw also Julio score more touchdowns earlier in his career than when he got Calvin Ridley, because then Matt Ryan started going to Calvin instead of Julio. It's just a weird little thing that Matt Ryan does.
with a lot of the bye weeks coming in this week as well. I mean, the players you heard on, but some people are coming out with, you got dominant defenses. Hey,
Yep.
dominant defenses are on a bye. Unfortunately for me, the Bills are coming off a bad game, but they're on
Yeah.
their bye this week. You know, a lot of those bigger defenses are on the bye. If your roster is packed, do you drop your defense that you know to pick up one to replace it, or do you risk giving up a possible player that is more than likely going to be able to produce for you in the future, but you got to get a defense in to play that spot?
This is a great question, and this is part of that GMing, right? This is the
Yeah,
part that is not so great, that we don't like about the fantasy football, is dropping, some players that you are, have been potentially carrying your team. Here's what I'll say. I am looking for anybody who will drop the Buffalo Bills defense this week in all my leagues, because if as soon as they do, I'm snatching them up.
yeah,
But here's a little trick, because in an average league, you're probably not going to get that, right? Like, because
yeah.
and with there being so many buys this week, it's going to be really hard for teams to really hold on to little stash pieces like that. So here's what I would suggest: if you need a player, you need a plug and play, and you just can't hold on to two defenses, then because the Bills don't necessarily play this week,
Yeah.
what you can do, it's like a little glitch trick kind of strategy, is that you can go ahead and pick up, you drop for whatever player that you need to plug in and play this week. And then let's say you have another like stash that's like on your bench that you want to play, you want to see them play, they have a potential to break out or whatever. Well, as soon as their game plays, if they don't break out, and and their value is going to be kind of low, you figure you could probably pick them back up off waiver. Then you drop that player, pick back
Yeah.
up the defense before the Monday night game ends, and then you got your defense there. You kind of did a little swap, and then you could just try to go and attack that player, whatever. It's probably going to be easier to attack whatever player you just dropped over that Bills defense. But I'm
Absolutely.
doing that with a lot of players. Like, look for, this is going to be more so, and we talked about it on our waiver wire show, Pat, is like
Mhm.
more so look for the players that are being dropped tonight or in the morning than the players that are going to be picked up, because it's not a super juicy, waiver wire week. There's not a whole
Yeah.
lot of names out there, but some people really need those names. So they're going to be making those difficult decisions. And then that's where you go and you kind of scoop up the crumbs that, people are, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Looking around the league, just as some of the different players that are popping up, some of the guys that have had those big weeks and kind of disappeared. Is this a week where you can expect a resurgence? I think. Well, let me not say a resurgence. I would say Carson Wentz has played better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
No,
this
it's
is
a
this a
little
week where
shocking.
is this a week where you can expect that, or not a week? Is this now where we can expect Carson's going to be this guy moving forward? He's playing as a better quarterback. His receivers are starting to get kind of lined up with him. Just looking at that, a guy that's kind of been in and out of there, is he a guy that absolutely is going to be a above average quarterback moving forward?
I don't know if you can count on him each and every single week, Pat, but I do think he's better than people give him credit for. I
Yeah.
do think that you'll be able to flex him, especially during these bye weeks. He's going to have some nice matchups. They do throw. The defense isn't great. It's okay. It's not great. So
Yeah.
game script should be fairly in their favor. So if you need a quarterback, we brought him up on our show. I don't mind Carson Wentz, because people will laugh when you pick him up, and we'll make jokes, and you'll probably get a couple of people in your league that'll make jokes about you.
Oh
But the
yeah.
reality is, fantasy points are fantasy points. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, for example, you just remove the names. Carson Wentz had a better game than Tom Brady this year or this past weekend. But you're not going to take Tom Brady rest of the season over Carson Wentz. I'm just telling you, trying to remind people that it's a week-to-week game, and that, they might not technically be so much better in actual talent, but depending on certain matchups,
Yeah.
you can plug these guys in and they'll be just fine.
Here's a good question coming in from the chat, and send your questions into the chat. We love to
Yeah.
answer the questions from the
Um,
chat. Love getting into it with you guys, man. I see Baki in the chat. Shout out to Baki,
Our
always tuning in
guy.
for some fantasy fun. We got
Love
Mixon
Bucky.
and Ridley, or Jonathan Taylor and Marquise Brown.
Oh, I'm going to stay in the flame. Give me Jonathan Taylor and Marquise Brown. Jonathan Taylor really, really doing some damage right now with the
Yeah.
touches that he's doing. They're going to keep feeding him. They're in the red area a lot. Pat, and they give him so many red zone touches that he's one of those guys I want. I do like Mixon. I do think that he continues to be kind of that low end RB1 for you, but Jonathan Taylor truly has a top 5 upside. And then Marquis Brown, like this is his third year wide receiver breakout. We see this often, and I'm staying in the flames with Marquis. I think he's here to stay. I think Lamar is actually really showing people he can throw, which surprised me. I'll be the first to admit it. But yeah, and then Ridley, I'm just concerned about as far as volume.
Yeah,
Great question.
It's always interesting, especially with Mixon. You know, a lot of people were kind of down on him, and then all of a sudden he has the. It's like, no, he's just hurt, but like, take it easy. You know what I'm saying? Like he's back with a vengeance. Has a big week last weekend. Here's a good question: trade Sutton and Hunter Renfrow for Ridley PPR.
This one I don't mind. This will probably be one of the few of where I would say I wouldn't mind going and getting Ridley in this case. And the reason is I am kind of trading Sutton high right now because you've got him coming off of a monster game. He's had a couple of monster games, but Jerry Jeudy is supposed to be back in a couple of weeks. And once that happens, you're going to have, Jerry Jeudy gobbling up a lot of those targets because you saw that, the chemistry. We were really high on Jerry Jeudy. So, yeah, I would actually take this time and, Hunter Renfrow, he's been pretty solid, but he's a waiver wire guy. You can pick these guys up off the waiver each and every single week and kind of refill that. So I'm okay with it.
Here's an interesting one that I got off of the Twitterverse, and actually a player that a lot of people are saying just because he got so much of the target last year. Jameson Crowder. Now, sitting there, rookie QB in the room with him, tough to say yes, play him, don't play him. But coming into these bye weeks, these are the kind of players that are still going to be very much available in these leagues. What are you seeing? I believe only 27% rostered right now. What are you seeing for Jameson Crowder moving forward?
This is where, as an analyst, I love these things, right? Because we get to talk about these players that you generally probably aren't going to talk about, even coming into the season or in most weeks, right? Because they're not sexy. People don't really want them on their teams. But you're looking at a Crowder who he's a skilled veteran who plays the slot role for the Jets. And that role is very significant, especially when it comes to a rookie quarterback who that is like one of the check down reads. So they don't really use the tight end a whole lot there. And for me, I think that you could do a whole lot worse. Like you said, it's not sexy, but you could do a whole lot worse than Jameson Crowder, who's going to get you, 8 targets, maybe, and he can see upwards of 12 in that system.
Absolutely. Here's an interesting one to me too. I like this comment. Got lucky rostering
nice.
Ertz. If you rostered Ertz, listen, you absolutely did. After Goddard was ruled out, bye weeks are hitting me hard in week 7. Out of these 5, I need to start 4, and one must be a tight end. Higbee, Ertz, A-Rob, Ayuk, and Ty. Full PPR.
So great question. I wouldn't start Ertz this week. It was a great pickup. And Arizona should use him, especially because he is a more of a pass catcher than a blocking tight end. And that was kind of the thing with Max Williams was a really good blocker. So they ended up leaving him in more significantly and giving him more playing time as a blocker. And then he would leak out, whatever. But Zach Ertz won't be doing that kind of like he'll be going out for passing routes. So I do think better days are ahead for Ertz, but I wouldn't play him this week. Too new into the system. He's got to get acclimated, all that. Higbee, I would go with. He has a pretty good matchup as well. So I would go with Higbee. And then you've got A-Rob, Ayuk, and Ty. I think those are the other 3 that you have to start. Right?
You're still starting A-Rob over Ertz there, huh?
Well, I wouldn't. Here's the thing. I wouldn't. I don't love these. You got to watch Ty. That's the thing. If you're only giving me these options, then unfortunately, I am going to go A-Rob over Ertz this week just because it's just such a new, like the first week in, it's hard, especially in a tight end position. So I would still roll out A-Rob. But I do really believe that you probably have, Joe, better options on your waiver wire than like Ayuk and Ty. Just because if Ty plays, then I'm fine with playing Ty.
Yeah. For those out there who have those Arizona receivers, running backs, who's the guy that takes the hit there? Because
Yeah.
Ertz is gonna get the ball. He's
Right.
gonna become. I mean, he's a big body. He's got that championship pedigree. He's gonna be that guy. They're gonna find an opportunity for him to be in the end zone. Who's the receiver? Who's the guy that takes the hit from him coming in and getting those touches?
Well, there's a couple, right? Yeah, Rondale Moore, he'll see his snaps slowly or get a little less, right?
Yeah.
That because you generally see when the tight end plays a little bit more, then Rondale's snap count goes a little bit down. But the interesting thing is they're also starting to kind of match Rondale Moore's routes with Christian Kirk. And so what you're ultimately seeing is that this is all affecting DeAndre Hopkins. And so we talked about on one of our shows last week, and I'll reiterate it here, especially because Hopkins is coming off a good game. He had a touchdown. I love DeAndre Hopkins. I'm a Cardinals fan. I wouldn't trade him as far as on my team, my actual team. But as
Yeah.
far as for fantasy, I'm trading him right now
Ooh.
because, like you said, there are a lot of mouths to feed in this
Yeah.
offense. And I'm not saying that they can't all be satisfied, because you can. This offense throws a lot, but more oftentimes than not, it's not going to be consistent for Hopkins for what you got him in the draft or what you can even get for him now. So I would actually try to trade Hopkins, and I think ultimately he's the one that gets his targets reduced more than anybody.
Yeah. What's the game that you zero in on this week coming that you're looking at for the big fantasy production from that one guy? There's I mean, still a lot of buys this week, but still a lot of talent out there that absolutely can break off and finally show, hey, look, maybe I should be on your fantasy team. Like how we say that, like we actually can pay him or something. But
Right, I know.
what's that one game that you're looking at coming into this week that you're zeroed in on watching for fantasy to help out in this big bye week crunch?
So there are a couple of them actually. Kansas City and Tennessee, really looking for that one because that's going to be a shootout. That both defenses can't stop a nosebleed if their life depended on it. So there's going to be a lot of passing. AJ Brown
Yeah.
getting him in. He finally came alive. Even Mecole Hardman, I think, is a fine dart throw this week.
Yeah.
Looking at Tennessee, who just allows everybody to get receiving yards. So really like that one. That one's going to be juicy. Detroit and the LA Rams. This one's going to be another one because low key, LA Rams, you're going to be starting Cooper Kupp. You're starting Bobby Trees. They are going to be against Detroit. Detroit,
Yeah.
another one of those teams that just give a lot. You can even throw Van Jefferson as a dart throw, waiver wire guy for a bye week flex. I think that's okay. And then even looking on the other side of the ball, right there, the LA Rams, they're a scary defense in the red area, not so scary between the 20s. They give up a lot. So a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown could be a decent bye week fill-in as well. Lots of
Tana
juicy
had to
ones there.
super chat in for this one because he said he
Ooh.
needs help.
Oh,
What
well,
up,
we got him.
fellas? I need a sleeper running back since one of my starters is out this week.
All right, we got one that I do think is interesting and he might be available. Khalil Herbert. That's Pat's boy. He was trying to tell us about him last week. He said, "Watch out." So I don't think I forgot about that, Pat. That was a good one. I like him. If he's available, I think that he is very, very interesting. And again, D'Ernest Johnson, I think that if you need to plug and play him this week, you could also do that. Or Rashad Penny is another guy that is a decent 1 week could potentially fill in.
Definitely. He says
I got Herbert. There you go.
Got Herbert.
There you go. Then you're good.
You're good. You already got him. You don't got to worry about nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, this is going to be a tough week for everybody out there in fantasy, man. So you make sure that you got to go check in with the boys over at the Fantasy Whispers. They're going to navigate you all the way through this tough bye week, man. Johnny, we appreciate you for tuning in and rocking with us, man. As always, Johnny Game Time Hicks tuning in, man. Check him out on Twitter. Follow him over there. Y'all see the Twitter out down there. Man, you got anything parting for the fantasy people, man? That one tidbit that you got, that nugget that you want to hold on to, but you got to let it out for the people.
I'm trying to think if I have any real deep, dark luck one. I usually do, and I apologize. I usually try to come on the show with one of those. I
Yeah.
got you guys normally,
You
but
usually
this
got a
week
beat.
it's just but with this week having so many
Yeah.
buys, Pat, the struggle is going to be real, even for us. Who are we can find these deep dash. Yeah. I don't have one for this week per se yet, but
Yeah,
I'll tweet it out. I'll tag you in it.
for
So
sure.
that way, if you can go get them on your waivers, you can. But one to think about for next week. It's one of those that they're on a bye this week. But Agnew, the wide receiver for Jacksonville,
Yeah.
he is low key just getting a ton of targets, and he's someone I played in DFS this past week, and he's someone that if you need help, coming in the next coming weeks, that he's a low key guy that should have some good solid production.
Would you rather see that's the tough part. Would you take the L this week, like hurt your roster this week to pick up somebody who's on a bye who absolutely can help you in the future?
Ooh, that's a difficult question because then I'll be honest, and I don't like it. You start to get into that whole moral, some people will, especially in the fantasy community, you get that whole like moral stuff going on with you have to start a full roster, and some leagues are real bad about it.
Yeah.
What I usually will do is like I'll just generally if that's the case, and each person is different. It depends on your like risk level. But
Yeah.
if I ever am doing that, I'm going to come out and say, hey, legit, this is what I'm doing. So that way there isn't that, oh, they're not playing. I'm like, yo, I'm not going to play my full team this week because I still think I can win and I don't have anybody else I can drop. And then, some people will give you, some trash talking for it, but it is what it is. I don't
Yeah.
want to necessarily give anybody that tip of the cap, but you can. I've seen players do it. It's long answer short. I've seen some players do it. I don't know if I would do it.
Ugh, yeah, listen, in the situation I'm in, I'm bottom of the this is the worst I've ever played in fantasy. Of course, while I'm
Yeah.
doing the show, right? It's the
Yeah.
worst I've ever played in fantasy in my life,
Because
and it's
everyone
crazy.
knows your secrets now, Pat. That's
You know
why.
what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know what's wild? Like, legit, like everybody in my fantasy league watches this show and they literally come in and they're like, "Man, I picked him up the second Johnny said to go pick him up," and I'm like,
Uh,
"Well, I got to do the show, so."
yeah, I know it's brutal. Like that's yeah. I apologize, Pat. I'm sorry. I'll start. What I could do is just I'll text you before the show. I'll be like, hey, these are a couple, and then
There
and
you
then I
go, a
got
little
you. All right,
sleeper.
I
Yeah,
got
it's
you.
no insider trading. We're all good out here. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Hey,
yeah.
we appreciate y'all for tuning in and rocking with us. Make sure to check the boys out over on the Fantasy Whispers. They're dropping nuggets every single day, doing a great job. And those Monday Night Football lives are tons of fun to be in, man. Just break down fantasy ramifications for you guys. It seems for Austin, it seems to always come down to a Monday night game.
Always. I know he's like, it's yeah, it's so wild, but we love it. That's what it's great. Great reaction, great people in there. We love having you guys come in there. It's a good time hanging out, just enjoying some football, talking some fantasy football, good stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's get one more in here because he got in right before I was about
Oh,
to close it out. Please help. The please help is what did it.
I know,
When
yeah.
you're texting quick and you throw PLZ, that means I need this right now. Should
Uh,
I trade
Life or death.
Waller for Jonathan Taylor? Straight up, I have Pitts.
Yes, I would do this absolutely. I am very concerned about Waller. They are spreading the ball with Renfro and with Ruggs down the field, and you're seeing that affect Waller's target market share. And Jonathan Taylor, like I said, great schedule coming up, and they're riding him. So I would absolutely 110% do this.
Johnny Game Time Hicks, y'all. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the page because we do this fantasy segment weekly. We will see you guys next week to break down if I'm going deeper in the hole or if I finally get a win. No, I'm just playing. Hey, Chicago, the world, everybody in the fantasy community out there, y'all stay safe out there, man. See you guys next week. Peace.